Hello, I'm Shauna Horn. So as we begin, I just want to share that my applied project did change like many others. Some of the components of my original project were able to be continued, others were not. So the revised goal, you'll see here, was to create and implement a strategic plan to respond to the necessities of online worship and programs as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, with the ultimate goal of coming through the COVID-19 pandemic stronger in our faith, service, and community connections. And so that became my work, is how can we come through stronger together? How can I empower staff in the process? And obviously that's kind of an interesting goal because who knows when the pandemic is going to end, but I do feel very strongly that we were able to set ourselves up on a path and equip our congregation and keep our focus on looking ahead. So you'll see if you look through my website, if you want to look through my portfolio, I have links and things that you can look at. So let's get into this project. I had created in kind of this revision 6 achievable outcomes. So the first achievable outcome, the first couple really were carryovers from the plan that I had originally. And that was to create a weekly email that offers spiritual direction for the week for staff. And I was able to do that without a problem. So I had actually started that almost exactly a month before we quit meeting in person, which was so helpful to have that process already in place to be able to share and disseminate that information with my staff. So we did that, and it was able to adjust to the pandemic as a really useful tool. The second outcome, I had planned to realign job descriptions to reflect the church's vision statement during our annual staff reviews. So I was not able to do that when staff reviews were scheduled for the second 2 weeks in March, which meant we had to completely scrap that and come up with a new calendar. And I'm still doing staff reviews, but I'm almost done. So even though we didn't complete the task as outlined, the review process has been helpful in the midst of this. So outcome 3, it was updated. Begin weekly staff meetings to keep updated when everyone is working from home. And to share important updates and check in on the well-being of staff. With so much changing so quickly, especially in the beginning, it just became really important that we meet every single week. Previously, we were meeting monthly, but also it's become a place of centering and offering prayer and encouraging one another. So that's been a good addition to our calendar. Outcome 4 was creating pathways, and this is where we get into the meat of the project. Create pathways for community connection and relationships. If you remember, one of my primary objectives was to come through stronger in our community connection. So the first thing we did was identify people who might be prone to isolation in the midst of pandemic. We delivered care packages just before the pandemic, and then we set up a church friends network where people are partnered with those individuals who might be more vulnerable to isolation or have more health risks. People have volunteered to call them weekly and to just reach out to make sure that they are staying connected and have what they need. So we're not leaving anyone behind. And then part of this too was helping staff strategize online community connections, including a path for children's ministry, youth ministry, music ministry, and adult faith formation. And each of them did that just to an exceptional level. And so you'll see some of my artifacts. Our children's ministry director did a walk through or a yoga pose through the story of Palm Sunday. And it was so wonderful. So he's bowing to the King. And if you want to watch it, the YouTube video link is here. This picture below is all of my kids participating in a youth group game night. And so we just were able to create Zoom community and online community and interactive community really quickly to make sure that those connections stayed strong. The third, oh, see, here it is. It was out of order. I'll have to fix that. The online e-newsletter, and you can see an example of it here with information to keep everyone connected. The fourth task in this area of community connection was around worship and maximizing participation in worship. We had, in the 16 worship services we've done so far online, I estimate around 75 people, and actually it's probably even more than that when you consider, like, right here we have a family that have participated in worship either through music, as a greeter, as a lay reader or liturgist, or some other kind of special part of worship. And so what a beautiful thing to increase our community connection and participation in worship. My goal in this is I just wanted us to see each other as much as possible. So as many people as I could put into worship each week as we possibly can continues to remind us that we really love each other and we have these deep connections with one another. And it keeps us connected to each other, even if it's through a screen. The last one, our task 5 here, was about creating innovation ways to celebrate key occasions. So there's a whole list of things that were going on here in worship, and you all probably felt this too. Between Holy Week and finishing Lent and Pentecost and Mother's Day and Father's Day and graduation and all the things that we needed to do in church and celebrate, it was important that we created a list of ways to do that, both to maximize engagement, but also help people feel really connected and have a meaningful worship experience around these different celebrations. And so we handed out palm branches and we decorated the lawns of our seniors. And on Easter, we had a baptism and welcomed 4 new members, our new members, all under the age of 25, which was phenomenal. We have begun small group Bible studies for people to be in faith development and formation together. And then this idea of creating a ministry plan, we passed in the middle of a pandemic strategic missional goals, which was phenomenal. We took the process that we were already working on from the fall, we adjusted and modified those goals for 6-month goals to live into this first or next stage of the pandemic. So the next goal was around meaningful worship. And that was really about purchasing the right equipment and learning the right tools to do the things we needed to do. And then finally, outcome 6 is also really exciting. It's about how we connect to our larger neighborhood. And so I started with this idea of how do we care for our neighbors in a way that's meaningful and safe. And we created a prayer tree in front of our building where people could come bring a ribbon, tie it to the tree to symbolize their prayer. And when people come to the tree, they can pray for one another, for all of the ribbons that are there. And as the pandemic got kind of really going, I was able to connect with 3 of my clergy colleagues right here in the neighborhood. You can see it on that map. And they also created prayer trees or prayer railings so that we were collectively holding our church, our community in prayer and offering prayer walks between our churches for people to meditate and hold one another. Our little free library transformed into soul care, just to have resource available for our neighbors and trying to anticipate what the needs of our community might be. We created lawn signs to let people know what we were doing and what we were up to. And this has been so important as we connect with one another. And after the death of George Floyd, then there was this immediate need to respond to our community as well. And so we started partnerships with Hamlin Church, which is just a Methodist church nearby, and worked together on ways to engage in service and anti-racism work. In this anti-racism work and after the death of George Floyd, we had a day of action. And in that day of action, we had 50 people show up to do work, various types of action in our community. So as the process or the project was to keep our eyes on coming through the pandemic stronger in our worship, in our service, and in our connection, there were also these secondary incomes. So when I think about this and this idea that we wanted to come through stronger in our faith, service, and community connection, I feel like we absolutely have done that on so many levels. We have around more people worshiping with us weekly, around 150 averaging per week, whereas before we were at 132, and some are higher, than 150, but that's where we've been sitting. We have people engaged in weekly Bible study. We have people engaged in doing work out in the neighborhood and community. We have people coming to online coffee hour and Zoom prayer time. And on top of all of that community building, people are also connecting with their faith in new ways and asking new questions and responding in real time to sermon challenges, which has just been phenomenal to see. And as a result, when George Floyd was killed, our community was ready to jump into action. And to me, that's a good indicator that what we are doing is working. We are continuing to build faith. We are continuing to build service, and we are continuing to build community. And this is just some of I get cards and letters and emails. It's just very kind, the way people have been responding to this season of online worship. And then I just had this one little page here just to close. But this applied project has kept me focused in a time of distractions, focused on the mission of the church, focused on our church's mission or vision, which is to be a joyful, welcoming community, igniting hearts and minds for God's work. So this is my project, that we would come through stronger in our faith, stronger in our service, and stronger in our community.